Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Promoting Engagement and Interaction. My name is Jasmine. I'm an educational development and digital learning designer, and I'm here with my colleague Mariette, who is in the same role, who will be co-facilitating today with me. We're both from Teaching and Learning Services. As usual, we're recording the lecture, and the recording will be posted on our Teaching and Learning Knowledge Base under the Webinars section. Excuse me. There you'll find the recording, the slides, and any resources and documentation that we share during the session today. So we'd like to give a brief land acknowledgement while people settle in. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we're on today. I think it's important that even in a virtual space that we think about and acknowledge the Indigenous peoples who have long stewarded this land, the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe nations. This acknowledgement is meant to strengthen and reaffirm our responsibility and commitment to improving the relationship among nations that live here, and perhaps be a starting point for further conversation and to further our own understanding of people and cultures of this land. So these are some of the goals that we have for the webinar today. Our first is to define what engagement and interaction mean in the context of in-person, online, and blended teaching and learning environments. We will also be identifying different technologies and strategies that you can use to include in all of these environments to promote engagement in your course. So I want to start with a little interactivity here in the spirit of an engagement and interaction webinar. We're going to use the text from the annotation tool in Zoom to write out what we think or what you think student engagement is when it comes to learning and why is it important. So to participate, I ask you to click a button. Let me make sure it should be enabled already. Yeah, click a button usually along the top of the screen that says view or more options, and it should give you a drop down that has an option for annotate. Sometimes the annotation is right on your toolbar there, but sometimes it's not. So when you click it, you should see a toolbar that looks like this, and if you could click the text option and click anywhere on the white part of the screen to engage with the question. If you're not comfortable, you can also put your response in the chat and I can just copy it over. So why is creating opportunities for interaction or engagement important, especially in learning? Oh, let me disable. Even if I just get one response, that would be great. Thanks. Engagement enhances.
Hi, I can't seem to find I'm on view and it doesn't say anything about annotate, and I don't have the annotate button on the bottom. So,
Oh, okay.
Caroline, it is at the bottom left, right above the audio, the microphone icon.
I see. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Raj.
Oh, I wanted to, I actually wrote engagement enhances learning, but learning disappeared for some reason.
Oh, there it is. Now I see
Sorry
it.
about that.
Jasmine, is it possible for you to enlarge the box there? I can't do it now because it's not selecting what I wrote.
Which box?
Where engagement, it says engagement enhances. There is another word to that box.
Okay, yeah, I don't know if I can.
Yeah, it's okay.
Here we go. Oh, there we go.
Yes,
Yeah.
there you go. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Perfect.
I wasn't
Yeah.
lying. I did find it.
All good. Okay. So yes, we have some great responses here. I'm just going to copy some that came in through the chat. Students are actively involved in their learning, better comprehension, engagement enhances learning. It ensures student participation to foster deeper learning. Yes, these are all great responses. So research has demonstrated that creating opportunities for engagement increases student attention, their focus, it motivates students, it can promote the practice of higher level critical thinking skills, it can create more meaningful learning experiences, and it puts the students really at the center of their learning and increases their success and empowerment. So let me clear these and close this. Perfect. So I can see that we do have understanding that engagement is important in the classroom, and that it's important for learning. So we know the why. And if we would want to back up just a second before we tackle the how to increase engagement or how to make your class more engaging, let's address the what. So what is engagement exactly? The concept of engagement is multidimensional. So before giving you strategies on how to increase engagement in general, we think it's important that you realize that there are different modes of engagement and different ways for students to interact when it comes to learning. And there are even more than what we're presenting here, but these are kind of the fundamental foundational ones. So engagement can occur through students engaging with course content. So this can be passive, can be like reading or listening, but it can also be active if you give them ways to apply that content. It can also occur between students, so between peers, and it's about how students are engaging with each other, how they're working together, how they're forming community, building community. It can also occur between instructors and students. So how do you interact with them? What are maybe some formal, what are some informal ways that you can connect with your students? And creating opportunities for engagement is important regardless of the context that you're in. So whether you're in person, online, synchronous, meaning we're all like we are today, present together on Zoom or in an online environment, or online asynchronous, which allows students to access the content on their own time. And we're going to be talking about strategies and technologies that you can use for each of these contexts. So I'll pass the next part on to my colleague, Mariette, who will talk about in-person activities and strategies.
Thanks, Jasmine. So let's look at some strategies for in-person or face-to-face classes. So here's an example of how you might want to structure a 50-minute interactive lecture. So it starts off right away with an interactive activity where students are welcomed, and then they can engage in a polling activity. So you could have like a polling question or two on the previous lecture, or maybe check their pre-existing knowledge on the new topic. Or you could even have like an informal polling question asking students how they're feeling today. And then for 12 minutes, you could do a situating activity where you could show students where they are in the course, looking at the syllabus and saying, okay, here we are at week 3. Last week we covered this. This week we're going to cover this particular topic, and then get started on the lecture. And then a 1-minute think break where students can reflect on the content. Maybe you can like ask a question and give them 30 seconds to think about it, and then flip back to lecturing. And then maybe a think, pair, share activity for 5 minutes. So you could ask students a question, they can think about it on their own, and then they could turn to a neighbor and discuss. So think, pair, share works well with large classes as well because it's individual reflection and then sharing with one person. And then you can flip back to lecturing and wrapping up. And the last 5 minutes can be for exit cards. So with exit cards, students can jot down maybe a key takeaway of what they learned in class or any questions they may still have. So students can do this on a piece of paper, or they could do it in the My Courses discussions. So the 3 types of strategies: student instructor, student content. So in terms of student instructor, an example of that would be the 10-2 teaching strategy, where you lecture for 10 minutes and then have 2 minutes maybe of small group discussion, where students can either summarize the material presented or maybe address a specific question you may have posed. The idea here is to create like a space where students can remain engaged, where they can reflect, they can discuss, they can question and share. And then in terms of student-student, you could do small group work Maybe the students can take advantage of some of the features in the room. If there are whiteboards in the room or writable walls, or even maybe use a digital whiteboard like Mural. And then in terms of student content interaction, polling can be used. It's really a great way to kind of gauge students' understanding and really get them actively engaged in their learning. So this is just an example of a student-student interaction. This is kind of like a fun icebreaker example where students are using a digital whiteboard. Here, team members are engaging in an icebreaker activity where they're identifying their hopes and fears, and they're arranging these different colored sticky notes on the canvas. So Mural is great for kind of like fun, creative activities, but it's also super great for like brainstorming, concept mapping, and case studies. And we'll show you some more examples. Actually, Jasmine's going to show you some more examples a little later on in the presentation. In terms of student content interaction, this is a screen capture of a polling question. We have a new polling tool called Vivox, and they had one of the new question types is the pin-on image question type. So here, students are asked to identify where the patella is located. Again, polling is a really great way to kind of check students' understanding and kind of get their attention and get them motivated. So there's a lot of teaching strategies. And we have a whole bunch in the teaching and learning knowledge base. And maybe what I'll do is I'll put the link for that in the chat. Yeah, so we have a whole bunch of teaching strategies. These are just kind of like some of the categories of those teaching strategies. So in interactive lectures, you're going to find the 10-2 strategy. In discussion generation, you'll find think, pair, share. In synthesis and reflection, you'll find information on exit cards, and information on polling can be found in the misconceptions. So a question for everybody on the call today: what teaching strategies have you used in your class to promote engagement? Like, how do students interact with other students? Do you do group work? Do you use like the physical whiteboards in the classroom? How do they interact with content? Have you used polling before? Have you tried something like exit cards? Have you tried the 10-2 teaching strategy? Okay, with polling, okay, asking questions. Questions with discussions, and encouraging them to ask questions. Oh, think, pair, share. I think pair, share is a lot of instructors like that one. Yeah. Oh, okay, Emily, you've used Mural and Slido to promote in-class activities. Okay, great. Oh, great. Those are great. So one thing to consider, when you're thinking about teaching strategies, you can't help but think about what features are available in the classroom, right? Like if you want students to do group work, are students able to easily like turn to each other and discuss? Are they able to use the whiteboards in the room? Are there whiteboards in the room? These are things that you kind of would like to know. You want to know what's available in the classroom. And so there's this online resource. It's the classroom information widget. It's on the McGill IT portal website, and I'll put the link in the chat for that. So if you go to the McGill IT portal website, you're going to see a little link to browse classrooms. When you click on that link, you might be prompted to log in with your McGill credentials. And then you'll see like a list of buildings. And then you'll find, if you click on a building, you'll have all the rooms. And then you'll see images of the rooms. You'll have a description of the equipment in the room, and you'll also have instructions on how to use the equipment in the room. That's a really neat resource for instructors. Okay, so we looked at in-person. Now let's look at some online synchronous strategies. So kind of like the same thinking around active learning for the physical classroom can apply to the online synchronous context. So you have a welcome and check-in for 5 minutes. You could use the polling in Zoom or polling at McGill or even Mural. Then you could situate the content and lecture, a 1 minute think break. You could flip back to lecturing. You could also use the picture prompt teaching strategy. We could show students like an image or a graph, and you could ask them to explain or identify it. They could type in the chat, or you could even put them in breakout rooms to discuss the image. That's followed by a lecture and a wrap up, and then exit cards. So in terms of student instructor, if you're using Zoom, students can, write their comments and questions in the chat. If you want to do some student-student interactivity, you can put students in breakout rooms, or they could use Mural, and you could use the polling within Zoom or polling at McGill. So here's an example of the picture prompt teaching strategy. I attended a keynote. It was given by Professor Scott Freeman from the University of Washington, and he was going to give a talk about active learning. So he started the session by showing this image. And he said, okay, this is Henry of Germany at the University of Bologna. And he asked us to type in the chat, like what we saw in the image. So participants were like, well, I see someone lecturing. I see some students looking at books. I see some students in the back chatting. I think I see a student off the side sleeping. So people were typing this in the chat. And then Professor Freeman went on to say, he's like, well, this was in the 1300s, like 700 years ago. And how much has really changed since then? So it was really cool that he used the picture prompt strategy to kind of like kick off his talk on active learning. So that was really cool. So here's an example of the picture prompt teaching strategy. Okay, Jasmine, I'll send it back to you for online asynchronous strategies.
Thanks, Mariette. So for online asynchronous teaching strategies, I thought we would talk about discussion boards. So discussion boards, and there is a discussion board tool in my courses, is an excellent tool that you can use to promote engagement and interaction in an online asynchronous environment. The discussion board can be used in multiple ways to achieve all the modes of engagement in that particular context. So this slide provides an overview of various activities that can be carried out using the discussion boards. As you can see, they can be utilized in multiple contexts. I'll go through each of these and explain the corresponding activities and give examples for a few of them in a little more detail. As an instructor, you have the opportunity to interact with your students on the discussion board. So you can set up a open kind of Q&A forum that serves as a platform for students to ask questions, maybe seek clarifications, and address misunderstandings about the course or the content. You and your teaching assistants can save time this way by addressing kind of frequently asked questions collectively rather than having to go through individual emails and responding to everybody individually. You could also use it as a space for icebreakers, so it can be used to create that sense of connection between you and your students from the very beginning of the course. You can introduce yourself through a video, share it on the discussion forum, for example, and encourage students to introduce themselves either through text or through video. You can also initiate an icebreaker activity by posing a fun question and having them share something personal about themselves. So this promotes instructor to student and student to student interactions, and it can help create a supportive and engaging learning community from the beginning of the course. The discussion board can also serve as a space for students to post reflective journals, which is a really neat feature. So you can configure it so that only you and the individual student can view their journal entries. So throughout the semester, students might have prompts that they can answer or reflections that they can engage with on the course material, and allow you to provide kind of personalized feedback one-on-one to those students. And it allows students that way to kind of track their progress and growth over the duration of the course. Discussion boards are also an excellent platform for students to connect with each other. You can create what I've seen called a student cafe. So this is kind of an unmoderated space where students can engage with each other, ask each other questions. It's a little bit more hands-off in terms of the instructor. It's really meant to allow for open dialogue and kind of informal discussions. You can also create separate discussion forums for group work activities. So in these forums, only members of a specific group can view and participate in that discussion forum. This setup enables kind of seamless collaboration among group members, ensures their interactions remain focused and relevant to the assigned tasks. And another way to use the kind of group discussion feature is if you have a large class and you want to have discussions, but you want kind of students to be less intimidated by having to either, read through all of the students that have posted. You can create smaller groups so that they can engage and interact and discuss within those smaller groups, just to make it a little bit more intimate and like easier for them to manage on their end. You can encourage student interaction and engagement with your content as well. So you could use the discussion board to have students answer questions related to specific topics. So for instance, you could have them provide brief summaries of a reading or respond to a question based on assigned material. So this allows students to demonstrate their comprehension and critical thinking skills while engaging with the content. You can use question prompts that encourage them to engage in reflection on their knowledge and understanding, a little bit more like meta, prompt them to identify areas that they're confident in, areas that need further clarification. So this enables them to also assess their own learning progress and encourages them to actively engage with course material. This is an example of a discussion board that was designed a few years ago for the World of Chemistry course, which was a fully online course. This was for Unit 2. You can see that there are multiple discussion questions pertaining to various topics that were covered in that particular unit that week. So this not only encourages students to participate, but it also allows you to identify areas where they may be struggling or have misconceptions. So the $1 million question about discussion boards that we usually get is how to get your students to engage. And it can be a little more tricky, especially for predominantly in-person courses. It's a little bit easier for fully online courses, but it's still an important question, I think, for both. Before I talk about different strategies to consider, I'd like to know if you've used discussion boards before in my courses. And if you have, what strategies have you used to increase engagement or get students posting? Maybe you haven't used them. That's okay too.
I tried, but failed miserably.
Oh, really? It like
Because my
there's
class is one that is large, two, it is all in person.
okay.
They would rather come to my office, ask questions than putting that in the discussion board. At least that's what I felt.
Interesting. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, fair enough. So you used it as a Q&A sort of
Yes,
space
yeah,
and nobody. Yeah.
I'm not still very comfortable with that yet, but yeah.
Yeah, like it's very true that sometimes for the in-person, especially if you're using it for Q&A, if they're more used to seeing you and more comfortable with making that connection with you. I mean, that's not a bad thing either. If you have a lot coming in through email, though, it would be a nice way to kind of reduce the number of emails that you have to answer. But yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping. But my problem is that it's only those same 5, 6 students that come. Rest of the whole 90% of the class, they don't want to deal with me at all.
What class do you teach?
I teach endocrinology and
Okay.
I have like 110 students in the class.
Yeah.
And I only get about 25% of the students attending my lectures because I record my lectures and that's it. The day I say I record all my lectures, my class attendance goes down significantly.
Yeah, yeah. That's yeah, we've heard that before across the board. It's a tricky thing because recording lectures can be very helpful for students, especially for studying, for accessibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does sometimes impact
Yeah.
attendance.
I think Carolyn is on the same boat as me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Recording has caused a drop in attendance. All right, well, that's okay. Thanks for sharing. We'll still go through some strategies. Maybe you will be interested in giving them a shot. But it's still good to know to see how instructors have been using or not using the discussion boards. So some other sessions we've given, instructors will have different strategies. One being that grades, tying discussion board activity to a grade will often increase engagement, which is pretty typical. It really depends on the type of activity that you have. I think they're so variable. So having a Q&A, yeah, maybe if students are more comfortable coming in person, the Q&A doesn't get used that much. But if you were to use it for different type of activity, there are some strategies that you can use to increase engagement, hopefully. So one of the recommended practices for discussion boards to consider is the prompt or the question type. So the general guideline is obviously to make a question open-ended if you do want students to provide more than a one-word answer. But when I was looking into this, I felt that it was an interesting topic and worth exploring the different types of open-ended questions based on your activity, goal, or your desired outcome. So I found this list while doing some research on online discussion boards, and I thought it was interesting. So I wanted to share. So whether you want them to write a summary or explore the relationship between two variables, maybe a question could be having them make a hypothesis, interpret something, prioritize. These question types should give students tools to contribute in discussions and express their thoughts effectively. So these question types can also be applied to the feedback that you give them. So how you engage with them on the discussion board can impact how they're interacting. So, if you're giving them feedback, it should maintain an idea exchange, promote deeper inquiry, and help learners link that practice to theory. So feedback and responses to posts are also important in keeping them engaged and discussing. Some other strategies include, as I said before, creating smaller groups. So especially for those large classes where students can engage in smaller group conversations with their peers. If you have a class of 200 students, making smaller groups 10 students or 20 students per discussion group can make it easier for students to just manage the comments, keep up with the discussions. It can be overwhelming for students when they're faced with hundreds of posts that they have to read through. So providing those smaller groups allows for better participation, and it also ensures that their posts carry a little more weight, increasing the likelihood of them wanting, their posts to be read by their peers. Designing activities that require interaction that are assessed in some way. So for instance, instructing students that they have to make one post, a unique post of their own, and then reply to at least one peer's post. So we know students are often motivated by grades in the course. So you can incorporate this into like low stakes discussion activities, and that will often increase engagement. You can also set different rules in my courses in the setting. So for example, students cannot view their peers' posts until they have made a post of their own. So this is more useful for knowledge check type of questions or preventing students from being influenced by classmates before they share their answers or thoughts to a particular prompt. It's important to consider managing communications in your discussion board. So setting expectations for students is very important from the start, clearly communicating what you expect. So even like minimum word count, the required references that you want them to include, the desired level of formality, informing students about the importance of quality over quantity when it comes to their posts, and emphasizing the value of sharing new ideas rather than simply posting for the sake of posting. So that's something to keep in mind too. If you do have a grade associated, you don't want students just posting to post. You want them to ensure quality and that they're contributing to the conversation in a unique way. This is a screenshot of a course that had case study questions for each module, not molecule, module. I saw pharmacology here. This particular instructor had a rubric, which I'll show you in the next slide, outlining the expectations for posting and communicated it in each module forum for students to read before they engaged with the discussion. So you can see the setting on this discussion board. Do I have, yeah. So this is where the rubric is. And the setting on this discussion board includes smaller groups. So he did break them down into smaller groups, and the students must post first before they see their peers' posts. This is the rubric that was used. So you can see here there are clear expectations in the rubric for the students to make posts in different modules on different weeks. So they were not expected to post every single week. They had to post at least 3 modules or 3 weeks throughout the term. There's some expectation for the post and the quality of the post here, the type of post he was expecting, and they have outlined what constitutes as excellent, pass, or fail.
Do you know by any chance what was the class size?
The class
For this course?
size, I believe it was around 80 to
Yeah.
100. Yeah. Yeah. And it was in pharmacology. So it's important to establish an etiquette also if you're going to have activities at the discussion board. So the concept of an etiquette, which just is referring to online communication etiquette, it's always good to make it clear that anything abusive or offensive in terms of communication will not be tolerated. Even though that should be a given, it's good to remind students. And finally, it's important to determine how your discussion board will be moderated and who will be giving feedback and how. So will you be moderating the posts, or will you have a teaching assistant handle that responsibility? In some cases, I've seen instructors assign student moderators, so maybe a different moderator per week. Regardless of who will be moderating, letting students know that their posts will be read will significantly increase motivation. And I can speak to that as being a student that has had discussion forums online. So having some form of presence by the instructor, by the TA, that the discussion board is being moderated, prevents students from feeling unmotivated to post, and that their posts are not being read. So by addressing some of these factors, they can potentially increase the engagement with discussion boards and have students more motivated to post, and hopefully create a sort of supportive, respectful online environment. So I mentioned that you can associate grades to discussion boards, but from a technology standpoint, you can actually configure the forums or topics in my courses so that they're linked to your grade book in my courses. The view is similar to the grading view of assignments or quizzes. You can give written feedback to posts. You can include a rubric. You can give a points grade for individual posts, or kind of like an average of the posts that students post on the discussion board. And you can choose whether or not, there are different options for, here it is, the calculation. So it could be some of the posts, the average, the highest grade, etc., that gets posted on the discussion board when you're looking through what they've submitted. You can also view statistics of posts on a topic as an overview, or for each student. You can see how many threads and replies were posted by a particular student. And so with these features, you can see that there are different ways in which this discussion boards can be assessed in my courses. There is another tool that you might want to check out to boost engagement, a social annotation tool called Perusal. So at McGill, we have Perusal. where we can have students kind of read a document or view a video or listen to an audio together. They can leave comments, they can ask questions, they can highlight in the document and engage with each other. So with this tool, it's kind of neat because students can tackle, I've seen instructors use it for especially more dense readings. So students can kind of tackle these tough readings together. They can share their thoughts, concerns. They can, highlight where they're maybe not understanding something. And it gets the discussion going and gets them connecting with the content, and connecting that content with their own experiences, perhaps real life examples. And it helps them get to know each other too and create community in an online environment. Perusal also has a confusion report that you can view as an instructor. So it kind of highlights the areas where it kind of pulls out where students may be having confusion, where there are a lot of questions. It even is looking at like how much time students are spending on certain sections. So it will generate this report for you that you can kind of maybe view and then clarify or spend some time explaining certain sections of a reading. This is an example of a perusal reading here. So you can see that this is the text, this is the PDF, the reading that students are engaging with. They're highlighting these sections and they're making comments on the right-hand side here. It's a really neat tool, and if you're interested in it, we do have some documentation on our knowledge base. We also offer consultations on the tool. There is another tool called VoiceThread, which is kind of similar, a little bit, but a little bit different. It's an interactive web-based presentation tool, so it promotes collaboration and discussion between students. So students can upload a file. It could be a video file or a presentation, like a PDF, not a PDF, a PowerPoint. And other students can view the presentation and leave comments. So the comments can be left as text, as audio, or video format. So there are some language courses, for example, that use VoiceThread, and it allows them to practice speaking, hearing each other, getting feedback from the instructor. So it's similar to Perusal in that there's like engagement within a file type in terms of collaboration, discussion, and commenting, but VoiceThread is really more of a multimedia sort of tool. Oh, here's VoiceThread. And then we have Mural, which Marriott briefly mentioned. So it's another tool that's really neat that can help foster engagement in your course. It can be used in person in an in-person class, but it can also be used in an online asynchronous environment. So you could share the link to a mural and have students access it at different times and participate in whatever the activity is that you've created. So in Mural, they can post sticky notes, they can create drawings, they can post images, and much more. So they can interact with whatever the activity is and with the content and with you if you do engage with it as well. So this is like a very simple kind of icebreaker activity that students can complete asynchronously, and it's a template that Mural provides. So Mural has a ton of different templates as well for different activity types, but essentially it asks students to post an image of a book that they think people should read and post a note about why they think so. So you can like zoom into the board to different sections of the board. You can have many people in there at the same time. You can view individual posts that way. And I just wanted to show you that you can kind of create a mural, and when you share the link, they can have access to it at any time and participate in sort of asynchronous activities as well. It's typically used for a synchronous environment, but you could use it for both. And this is just another example of, it's a real example of how an instructor in geography used it. So this was for an in-person class. It was a kind of a kickoff of the term, just asking students how they're feeling. This instructor finds it very, very helpful to kind of get students, I don't know, just acquainted with each other, acquainted with her at the beginning of term. And I just kind of wanted to show you what an actual example of a populated mural board looks like. Yeah, Marriott, is it back to you? I think there was a slide there that we may no longer have, so that's why a little bit of confusion, but
Sure,
back.
yeah. So just to summarize our session today, we're already at the end of the webinar. So we looked at different strategies that address the three modes of engagement. So we have student content, student, and student instructor. And we looked at different context. We looked at in-person, we looked at online, and we looked at online synchronous and online asynchronous. So we have a whole bunch of events happening in May. So you could have a look at those on our TLS events page. We have lots of resources on our TLS website, on our teaching and learning knowledge base, and our teaching for learning blog. If you have any questions or need any help with any of the teaching and learning tools, you can always book a consultation with us from our consultation online form. And don't forget to connect with your colleagues to see how they're using different tools and how they're using different strategies in their teaching. And that's it.
Yeah, if you have questions, comments, concerns.
Oh, thank
Raja.
you.
Yeah, go ahead, Carolyn.
Oh, I was just going to say thank you. It was some useful ideas. I'm going to have to switch up some things this coming year, so it just gives me some ideas.
Great. Nice to see you, Carolyn.
Yeah, I also want to thank you. Yeah, it did give me a couple of ideas, which I think I had started using at least the discussion board, but that is something that I'll try to improve upon, and probably I'll probably come back to you guys for consultation at some point.
Sounds great. Raj, I have to tell you, I think I took your class way back in the day. I recognize.
Yeah, yes, I remember the name. Sorry, I did not recognize right away.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
It was like in 2010 or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I recognized your name and I'm like, I did take endocrinology. Nice to see you again.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you so much, everybody.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.